Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the final part of our orientation. This section will cover interview skills and tips to set you up for success during the matching fair. So, what is the purpose of an interview? Interviews can be an opportunity to determine whether a candidate can do the job. So, do they possess the skills and qualifications needed to carry out all of the responsibilities on the job description? Whether the candidate will fit in with the company's culture. Is this the best candidate for the position? It allows an interviewer to choose from multiple people who might be applying for the same position. And finally, whether the candidate understands the job and how it ties into their career goals. For example, have they read the job description? Do they know what they're signing themselves up for? An interview is a good time for the interviewer to determine whether they've done their research. And how does it fit into your career goals? For example, does it tie in with your major or something that you hope to do in the future? An interview is essentially a good way to assess this in a very short amount of time. During your interviews, be sure that all of your answers persuade the employer that you are the best candidate to hire. Instead of just telling them that you have specific skills, you need to be able to give examples of times in which you have demonstrated that you have those skills. These can be examples from school, from volunteer experiences, and also past jobs. So essentially, make sure that you have concrete examples to support your claims. During an interview, you should never talk down about yourself or say something negative about yourself or former employers. Even if you didn't have the best experience at your last job, you should be talking about the things that you were looking forward to, not the things that you didn't like and that you're looking to get away from. In preparation for an interview, make sure that you are researching the organizations attending the matching fair. For example, what does the organization do? Which populations do they serve? How do their values align with your values and your career goals? If you are not ready to submit an application just yet, you can mark your favorites by clicking on the interested icon. So that's a little star next to the job posting so that they'll display at the top of your list and you won't have to go through the entire list. If you don't feel super confident about interviewing, you can always schedule a mock interview appointment with a CCPD advisor to brush up on your interview skills, or even practice with a peer, a family member, or just by yourself. On the day of the matching fair, make sure to have a few copies of your resume and pack these into a folder. Also have something to take notes with in case you need to write something down and the employer has provided you with additional information about the company that wasn't listed on the job description. And finally, make sure that you dress professionally, so dress for success, as first impressions are important during an interview. Professional attire includes, so these are examples of interview attire for both men and women. Please dress however you identify and in a way that makes you feel comfortable, not too comfortable. So don't wear your pajamas or anything like that. You should be wearing a collared shirt for men and for women. That works. Smart trousers, smart shoes. Please don't wear trainers. We're not asking you to go out and buy like $100 pair of shoes, but if you do have smart shoes, please wear those. No excessive jewelry or makeup. Make sure that your hair is neat. If you have a blazer, that is great. You can wear that. And just make sure that if you're wearing a skirt, this isn't too short. Make sure that your shirt is buttoned up and that your hair is neat. these are just some examples so there's a front view and a back view in this particular example. Some things to stay away from include trendy clothes like ripped jeans, Crocs, things that make you look a little bit too relaxed. No pajamas, please. And finally, if you are participating in virtual interviews, you should be dressed the same way that you would if you would be going to an in-person interview. For example, I know that we have experienced people who have maybe been wearing their underwear with a smart shirt during a Zoom interview, and they had to stand up and everyone saw their underwear. Obviously, that isn't very pleasant or professional, so please just make sure to wear to be fully dressed and to be dressed the same way that you would going to an in-person interview if you will be interviewing virtually. During the fair itself, you should be ready to answer questions about yourself, and remember to not let your nerves get the best of you and speak with confidence. I know this can be very stressful and be a little bit difficult, but as long as you practice, practice makes perfect, and that will make it a lot easier. You should speak clearly and concisely, so not too fast, not too slowly, and make sure that you are delivering your point without too many details. Make sure to project your voice so that you are clearly heard. Maintain good eye contact. Eye contact is a great way to show the interviewer that you are interested. If they offer a handshake, make sure that you respond with a firm handshake and show your enthusiasm by smiling, by asking questions, and express honesty in your responses. The interviewer doesn't expect that you'll know how to do absolutely everything on the job description. So if asked about your skills, please don't lie, just be honest. They understand that you are students and that you're still learning these skills along the way. Instead, if you, for example, do not have one of the skills that they are looking for, instead of saying that you don't have that skill just yet, you could tell them about how excited you are to learn. Sometimes an interview can turn into a conversation, so make sure that you employ conversational skills, which involves asking questions and also being ready to answer questions about yourself. And finally, respond thoughtfully and fully. If you need a little bit of time to think, you can just say that you need a little bit of time to think, but make sure that you are including enough detail in your responses. So for entry-level positions and internships, employers might not ask a lot of technical questions, but they are likely to ask behavioral questions. A behavioral question or a behavior-based interview question is a question that aims to learn about your past behaviors in specific work situations. The reason that interviewers might ask about your past behaviors is because how you have behaved in certain situations in the past might give them clues as to how you will behave if something similar came up in the future. So, for example, an interviewer might ask, can you tell me about a time when this happened? Can you tell me about a particular situation? How did you behave in that situation? And also, what was the outcome? When you are answering those questions, you should always be sure to keep your answers positive and don't say anything that would make you look bad. So it can be helpful to break these questions down, and there is a way to structure your answers so that you don't miss out on any details and you answer the question. So we would encourage you to use the STAR method. This is an easy trick to answer any behavioral or situational interview questions. Using this method of answering interview questions allows you to provide examples. So it allows you to very naturally integrate examples and evidence that you possess the skills that you say that you have, right? The STAR method enables you to share examples of how you successfully handled situations at work in a confident and natural way. So, The acronym STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So to begin with, you want to set the scene, right? That's the situation. You want to describe the context within which you performed a job or faced a challenge at work. So narrate the problem, explain what was the problem that you faced. Next, task. Describe your responsibility in that situation. What was the task that you were faced with specifically? Action. That's the next step. You then want to describe how you completed the task and rose to the challenge. So what did you do to make the problem better? And finally, you want to wrap it up with the result. You want to explain the outcomes or the results generated by the action that you took. And generally, these should end on a positive note. If you can't think of a way that they ended positively, you should be able to explain what you took away from that situation and what you learned. An example of a way in which you could use the STAR method. So if the question was, tell me about a time you had to complete a task within a tight deadline. Describe the situation and explain how you handled it, right? That's the question. An example response to that could be, while I typically like to plan out my work in stages and complete it piece by piece, I can also achieve high quality work results under tight deadlines. Once, at a former company, an employee left days before the imminent deadline of one of his projects. I was asked to assume responsibility for it, with only a few days to learn about and complete the project. I created a task force and delegated work, and we all completed the assignment with a day to spare. In fact, I believe I thrive when working under tight deadlines. So in this example, the S, so the situation piece, would be that an employee left days before the deadline of one of his projects, right? The task that you were then faced with was that you had to assume responsibility for it with only a few days to learn about and complete the project. The action, so what did you do to try to overcome the problem? The action was that you created a task force and delegated the work, and you all completed the assignment, right? That was the result. You completed the assignment. In fact, you had a day to spare. So that's one example of a way in which you can use the STAR method to answer these types of questions in which you are asked about a situation or a past experience. And remember, you've got this. Be confident, and if you need time to think, just let the interviewer know. It's better that you are able to convey your thoughts in a considered manner, right? And finally, it is very, very likely that the first question in your interviews will be, tell me about yourself, right? So the question, tell me about yourself, is asking you about your professional and academic experience. It's not so much about you as a person or your personal life. So a way to answer this question, tell me about yourself, is to develop a professional pitch. This is also known as an elevator pitch, as it should be delivered very naturally. And it's something that you could bring up in conversation, maybe if you ran into someone in an elevator and they wanted to know more about you. Right, so your professional pitch should answer the following questions. 1, who are you and what do you do? 2, why should they care? 3, what do you want? It can also include your past professional experiences, your current professional activities and personal traits, and also your future professional goals and expectations. Your professional pitch should be very short. For example, when you read this out, this is the example. Hi, I'm Alex Doe. I'm currently a senior and I'm studying computer and information science. I hope to become a computer programmer when I graduate. I've had a couple of internships where I worked on several program applications with the project team. I enjoy developing computer applications for simple business solutions. The position you have listed on Career Connect seems like it would be a perfect fit for someone of my skills. I'd like to hear more about the type of project teams in your organization. Okay, so that didn't take very long. I would say your professional pitch should be 90 seconds at the most. In this example, they have introduced themselves with their name, and also what they're studying and which college they attend, right? They've also included a little bit of information about their career goals and what they hope to do in the future. They then move into talking about what they've done in the past, so their past internship experience. If you don't have any job experience, you can talk a little bit about the projects that you've worked on in class, maybe some group projects or a capstone course. And also why you are interested and what you can offer the interviewer, right? So you're interested in the position that you found on Career Connect, and you think that your skills would be a great fit for that position. So those are the ingredients that you should include in a professional pitch. Finally, at the end of every interview, the interviewer will usually ask, "Do you have any questions for me?" You should always have at least a few questions prepared, because this is your chance to interview the interviewer as well. So, for example, I know that a colleague of mine likes to think of it in a similar way as a date, for example. It's never nice if someone is always is talking about themselves the entire time. So I think interviewers love it when you take interest in them and what they do. So that's why you should have questions, because questions are a great way to convey your enthusiasm. Do not ask questions that can be readily found on company brochures, for example. Oh, so what is it that you do? You should ask questions that will directly affect you and show your interest in the company's success. So for example, what skills do you look for most in a candidate for the clerk position or the position that you're applying for? Who will I work with most closely? Who will I report to directly? Is there anything else I can provide you with that would be helpful? These are all questions that you should be asking, and that demonstrate that you take interest in the organization. These are some questions not to ask, okay? So definitely do not ask how much you will be paid. You will be paid $16 an hour from LaGuardia, so the employer will not be paying you. So you should not be asking that question. How much vacation time will I get? Again, not a question to ask. This is a temporary position, so you will not receive any vacation time or sick time. Do not ask, so what does your company do, right? This is something that you should have researched beforehand. So you should go into the interview knowing what the company does. However, if there are questions that you have about information that could not be found on the internet, the company's website or brochures, you can definitely ask that. And finally, what is this internship? I think that just goes to show that you are completely disengaged with the process. Okay, that brings us to the end of our interview skills section. So the next steps, which are very important and time sensitive, would be to apply for at least 5 positions on Career Connect by this Friday. So by this Friday, you should have applied for at least 5 positions. And please contact me if you have any issues signing into Career Connect or will not be able to attend the matching fair.